5 facts that will completely shock you. The last one will blow your mind. Fact number 1. After death, the human brain can still hear sounds for up to 3 to 7 minutes, which is why doctors stay careful with their words. Death feels like a sudden full stop to life. But science suggests it may not be as instant as we imagine. One of the most chilling discoveries about the human body is that hearing might be the very last sense to shut down. Even after the heart stops beating and breathing ends, the brain doesn't immediately go silent. For a short window of time estimated between 3 to 7 minutes, the brain may still be active enough to process sounds. This idea didn't come from myths or horror stories. It comes from real medical observations. Doctors, nurses, and hospice workers have long noticed something strange. Patients who were declared clinically dead sometimes showed brain activity moments later. In some cases, EEG electroencephalogram readings revealed lingering electrical signals in the brain, even after the heart had stopped. These signals suggest that certain brain functions don't instantly collapse. Hearing is controlled by the auditory cortex, a part of the brain that is surprisingly resilient to oxygen loss. When the heart stops, oxygen supply to the brain is cut off, but neurons don't die immediately. Instead, they slowly begin to fail. During this slow shutdown, the auditory system may still be functioning. This means that the brain could still be picking up sounds, voices, footsteps, or even emotional words spoken nearby. In many hospitals, and especially in palliative care, medical staff are taught to assume that the patient can still hear, even if they appear completely unresponsive. Gentle words, calm voices, and respectful silence are encouraged. It's not just professionalism, it's compassion backed by science. There are also powerful real-world accounts that support this idea. Some patients who were revived after cardiac arrest reported hearing conversations that happened while they were dead. They described doctors talking, machines beeping, or loved ones crying. In some cases, they repeated exact phrases spoken during those critical moments, phrases they should not have been able to hear if the brain had fully shut down. Scientifically, this phenomenon is linked to how the brain handles oxygen deprivation. Different parts of the brain shut down at different speeds. Vision tends to fail early, followed by speech and movement. Hearing, however, appears to be one of the last senses to go. Evolutionarily, this makes sense. Hearing has always been crucial for survival, detecting danger, voices, or threats, even without movement or sight. Another unsettling detail is what happens inside the brain during these final minutes. Studies suggest that as oxygen levels drop, the brain releases a surge of chemicals, including endorphins and neurotransmitters. These chemicals may heighten awareness temporarily or create a dreamlike state. The brain does not stay alive indefinitely after death. Once neurons lose oxygen for too long, irreversible damage occurs. In short, death may not be the instant silence we imagine. For a brief moment, after life officially ends, the brain may still be listening, and that realization alone is enough to send chills down your spine. Fact number 2. Before extreme pain can kill you, the brain often shuts itself down and makes you unconscious as a final defense mechanism. Pain is one of the most powerful sensations the human body can experience. It's designed to protect us, to warn us that something is wrong. But when pain becomes too intense, so extreme that it threatens survival, the brain has a hidden emergency system. Instead of letting the pain destroy you, the brain can shut consciousness off completely, forcing you into unconsciousness. This isn't weakness, it's survival. This phenomenon is known as protective loss of consciousness. And it's one of the brain's most fascinating defense mechanisms. When the body experiences unbearable trauma such as severe injury, massive blood loss, intense burns, or extreme shock, the brain recognizes that staying conscious could be fatal. At that point, it pulls the emergency brake. Pain signals travel through nerves to the spinal cord and then to the brain. Under normal conditions, the brain processes these signals, allowing you to react. But in extreme situations, the flood of pain signals becomes overwhelming. Blood pressure drops, oxygen levels fall, and stress hormones surge. If this continues, organs including the brain itself are at risk of shutting down permanently. To prevent this, the brain triggers unconsciousness. One major reason for this shutdown is energy conservation. Consciousness requires enormous amounts of energy. The brain alone uses about 20% of the body's total oxygen. In life-threatening situations, the body can't afford that cost by turning off awareness. The brain reduces energy demand and redirects resources to vital survival functions like breathing and circulation. Another critical factor is shock. When someone experiences extreme pain or trauma, the body can enter a state called traumatic shock. Blood vessels dilate, blood pressure drops, and blood flow to the brain decreases. This lack of blood flow naturally leads to fainting or blackout. While it may look dangerous, it's actually the body's attempt to reset and survive. There's also a powerful chemical process involved. During extreme pain, the brain releases massive amounts of endorphins, natural opioids that reduce pain. These chemicals are far stronger than many painkillers. In some cases, they are so effective that people report feeling no pain at all during horrific injuries. This chemical flood can also induce unconsciousness, dissociation, or a dreamlike state. This explains something that often shocks people after accidents or disasters. Survivors sometimes say, "I didn't feel anything at the time." Others report watching themselves from outside their body, feeling detached from reality. This is called dissociation, another mental defense that protects the brain from psychological overload. But when pain crosses a certain threshold, consciousness becomes a liability. Staying awake could lead to cardiac arrest, brain damage, or death. So the brain makes a brutal but intelligent decision: shut down now, survive first. This mechanism also explains why people faint during extreme emotional distress. Emotional pain and physical pain are processed in overlapping areas of the brain. But in many cases, those few moments of shutdown are enough to stabilize vital systems until help arrives. What is truly mind-blowing is this: your brain may decide to knock you out without your permission, purely to keep you alive. It doesn't care about awareness, memory, or experience. Survival is the only priority. So the next time you hear about someone blacking out during extreme pain, remember, this isn't the body failing. It's the brain stepping in as a silent guardian, sacrificing consciousness so life has a chance to continue. Fact number 3. If a human stays awake for 7 days straight, the brain can start hallucinating and seeing dreams while awake. Sleep is not just rest, it's a biological necessity as vital as food and water. When the human brain is denied sleep for too long, it doesn't simply get tired, it begins to break its own rules. Reality starts to blur. Dreams leak into waking life, and the mind slowly loses its grip on what is real. After about 7 days without sleep, the brain can enter a terrifying state where hallucinations feel completely real. This happens because the brain is not designed to stay awake continuously. During sleep, the brain performs critical maintenance, repairing neurons, clearing waste toxins, balancing hormones, and resetting emotional control centers. When sleep is denied, these processes don't just pause, they pile up, creating chaos inside the mind. At first, sleep deprivation feels manageable. After 24 hours, reaction time slows and focus drops. After 48 hours, Memory becomes unreliable. By the third day, emotional control weakens. People become irritable, paranoid, and impulsive. But the real danger begins when the brain reaches its breaking point. After several days without sleep, the brain starts to experience. These are tiny episodes, lasting seconds where parts of the brain fall asleep while the person remains awake. During microsleeps, the brain can generate dream imagery, even though the eyes are open. This is the moment when hallucinations begin. What makes this especially disturbing is that the hallucinations aren't recognized as fake. The sleep-deprived brain loses its ability to separate imagination from reality. People report seeing shadows move, hearing voices whisper their name, or watching objects change shape. Some feel insects crawling on their skin. Others see faces where none exist. Scientifically, this happens because sleep deprivation disrupts the thalamus, the brain's sensory gatekeeper. The thalamus normally filters sensory information, deciding what reaches consciousness. Without sleep, this filter fails. Random neural signals are allowed through, and the brain tries to make sense of them, creating hallucinations. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, part of the brain responsible for logic, decision-making, and reality testing, becomes severely impaired. This means the brain cannot question what it's experiencing. Hallucinations are accepted as real, which can lead to panic, fear, and dangerous behavior. Historical experiments have demonstrated how extreme this can become. In controlled sleep deprivation studies, participants who stayed awake for extended periods reported vivid hallucinations, extreme paranoia, and distorted perception of time. Some believed they were being watched. Others thought they were trapped inside a dream. One of the most frightening aspects is dream intrusion. The brain becomes so desperate for REM sleep that it forces dreamlike activity into waking consciousness. This means you can be awake walking, talking, functioning while your brain is partially dreaming. Reality and dreams merge. This condition can mimic severe mental illness. Symptoms resemble schizophrenia, psychosis, and major depressive episodes. However, the cause is not a psychiatric disorder, it's simply lack of sleep. Once sleep is restored, most of these symptoms disappear. This shows how fragile mental stability truly is. Sleep deprivation also affects the brain's emotional centers. The amygdala, which controls fear and threat detection, becomes overactive. Harmless situations feel dangerous. Minor sounds feel threatening. The world becomes hostile, and anxiety skyrockets. This emotional overload makes hallucinations even more convincing. After around 7 days without sleep, the risk becomes life-threatening. The immune system weakens, heart rhythm becomes unstable, and the brain's ability to regulate body temperature collapses. In extreme cases, total cognitive breakdown can occur. What is truly shocking is that the brain doesn't shut down completely when deprived of sleep. Instead, it enters a broken survival mode, creating illusions just to keep functioning. It would rather distort reality than stop working. This fact proves one terrifying truth. Reality itself is fragile. Without sleep, your brain can no longer protect the boundary between dreams and the real world. And once that boundary collapses, the mind becomes its own worst enemy. Fact number 4. The human eye can see over 10 million colors, yet our brain processes only a tiny fraction of them. When you look at the world, it feels rich, detailed, and complete. Colors seem vivid, endless, and perfectly clear. But what you're experiencing is not reality as it truly is. It's a simplified version, carefully edited by your brain. Even though the human eye is capable of detecting over 10 million different colors, your brain only processes a small fraction of that information. The rest is silently ignored. This happens because seeing is not just about the eyes, it's about the brain. The eyes are simply sensors. They capture light and send raw data to the brain. What you see is actually a mental construction, not a direct feed from reality. Inside the retina of the eye are specialized cells called cones. Humans typically have 3 types of cones, each sensitive to different wavelengths of light: red, green, and blue. By combining signals from these cones, the eye can technically detect millions of color variations. From a biological perspective, the hardware is impressive, but here's the catch. The brain cannot afford to process all of that data. The visual cortex receives an overwhelming amount of information every second: shapes, motion, brightness, depth, and color. If the brain processed every color variation in full detail, it would be overloaded. Reaction time would slow, decision-making would collapse, and survival would be compromised. So the brain does what it always does best. It prioritizes efficiency over accuracy. Instead of processing every color, the brain groups similar shades together. Colors that are close in wavelength are treated as the same. Subtle differences that don't affect survival are discarded. This is why 2 shades of blue may look identical to you, even though they're physically different. This filtering process is also why optical illusions work. The brain fills in missing information based on context, expectations, and memory. It assumes rather than analyzes. In many cases, it literally invents details that were never there. Another shocking detail is that your brain only processes high-resolution color in a very small part of your visienda center, known as the fovea. Everything outside that narrow area is blurred, desaturated, and low detail. You don't notice this because your eyes are constantly moving, and your brain stitches these tiny snapshots together into a seamless image. In other words, most of what you see right now is not actually being seen in detail at all. It's being guessed. This also explains why different people perceive colors differently. Some people have more sensitive cones. Others have slight variations in their visual processing. What looks like deep red to one person may look slightly orange to another. Yet both brains insist their version is correct. Animals further expose how limited human vision really is. Some birds and insects can see ultraviolet light, a color range completely invisible to humans. To them, flowers look dramatically different, covered in patterns we can never perceive. Reality contains colors your brain will never allow you to see. Even more unsettling is how emotion and memory affect color perception. When you're depressed, the brain literally processes fewer colors, making the world appear duller. When you're excited or in love, colors appear brighter. The external world hasn't changed. Your brain's filter has. This means color is not an objective property of the universe. It's a subjective experience, created inside your mind. The world is not colorful by default. Color only exists because your brain decides to interpret certain wavelengths of light that way. So, when you look around and admire the beauty of colors, remember this: you are seeing a compressed, edited version of reality. Millions of colors exist all around you, but your brain shows you only what it thinks you need. And that raises a disturbing question: what else is your brain hiding from you? Fact number 5. If Earth stopped spinning for even 1 second, oceans, buildings, and humans would be violently thrown into the air due to momentum. Right now, as you sit and read this, the Earth beneath you is spinning at an unimaginable speed. This isn't science fiction. It's pure physics. Everything on Earth is moving together. The ground, the oceans, the atmosphere, and you. This is because of momentum, a fundamental law of physics that says an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an external force. Earth's rotation has been constant for billions of years, and everything on its surface shares that rotational speed. If Earth suddenly stopped spinning, the planet itself would halt, but everything on it would continue moving at full speed. That means you. At the equator, humans, buildings, cars, and oceans would be hurled eastward at over 1,600 kilometers per hour. This is faster than most commercial airplanes. Nothing is built to withstand that kind of force. Skyscrapers would rip apart at their foundations. Entire cities would be torn from the ground. The oceans would not stay in their basins. Water has mass, and mass in motion carries enormous energy. The oceans would surge across continents as planet-wide megatsunamis, thousands of meters high, obliterating everything in their path. Coastlines would vanish. Entire landmasses would be reshaped in minutes. The atmosphere would be just as destructive. Air moving at rotational speed would continue rushing eastward, creating global supersonic winds. These winds would strip soil from the land, flatten forests, and shred anything left standing. Breathing would be impossible. Even if you somehow survived the initial launch, the aftermath would be just as deadly. Earth's rotation is responsible for the day-night cycle and helps regulate climate. Without it, One side of the planet would face the sun continuously, becoming unbearably hot, while the other side would freeze in permanent darkness. Temperature extremes would reach levels incompatible with human life. Gravity would also change in subtle but devastating ways. Earth's rotation causes a slight outward force, especially at the equator. If rotation stopped, gravity would pull everything closer toward the poles. Over time, oceans would migrate away from the equator, leaving vast dry regions and flooding polar areas. The planet itself would suffer structural damage. Earth is not a solid rock. It has a molten, semi-fluid interior. A sudden stop in rotation would cause the mantle and core to shift violently, triggering global earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on a scale never seen before. The crust could fracture across massive fault lines. What's even more terrifying is that there would be no warning, no alarm, no time to react. The destruction would occur faster than the human brain can fully process. In less than a second, civilization would end. Thankfully, this scenario is virtually impossible. There is no known force capable of stopping Earth's rotation instantly without destroying the planet itself. But understanding this fact reveals something deeply unsettling. Our entire existence depends on delicate cosmic balances we never notice. The ground beneath you feels solid and still, but it is racing through space, spinning, orbiting, and hurtling around the sun at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. Life exists only because these motions remain stable. So the next time you feel safe standing still, remember this. You are already moving at incredible speed. And if that motion ever stopped even, for 1 second everything you know would be gone. Fact number 6. Your brain can completely fabricate memories so real that you would swear they actually happened. Human memory feels solid, reliable, and personal. We trust it blindly. We say things like, I remember it clearly, or I saw it with my own eyes. But here's the disturbing truth. Your brain can create false memories with such detail and emotion that you would be willing to defend them even if they never happened at all. Memory is not a video recording. It is not a storage device that plays back events exactly as they occurred. Instead, memory is a reconstruction, rebuilt every time you recall it. And every reconstruction is vulnerable to distortion, manipulation, and invention. When something happens, your brain does not store the event itself. It stores fragment sounds, emotions, images, and meanings. Later, when you remember, the brain fills in the gaps using logic, expectations, beliefs, and even suggestions from other people. The result feels real, but accuracy is not guaranteed. Scientists have proven this again and again. In psychological experiments, researchers were able to implant entirely fake childhood memories in healthy adults. Participants were told detailed stories about events that never happened, such as being lost in a shopping mall as a child. After repeated questioning, many participants didn't just believe the story, they began to add emotional details. They described fear, smells, voices, and visuals. Their brains had fully accepted the lie as truth. What makes this terrifying is that the brain does not label these memories as fake. Once formed, false memories activate the same brain regions as real ones. To the mind, they are indistinguishable. This happens because memory is deeply tied to emotion. The brain prioritizes emotional consistency over factual accuracy. If a memory feels right, the brain accepts it. Truth becomes secondary. This is why eyewitness testimony is one of the most unreliable forms of evidence. It has been responsible for countless wrongful convictions. People confidently identify suspects, swear they saw certain actions, and describe scenes in detail, only for DNA evidence to later prove them completely wrong. They weren't lying. Their brains rewrote reality. Stress and trauma make this even worse. During intense emotional events, the brain releases stress hormones that disrupt proper memory encoding. Later, when recalling the event, the brain fills missing pieces with assumptions. Over time, the altered version becomes the official memory. Even something as simple as wording can change memory. In famous experiments, participants were shown the same car accident video. When asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? People remembered broken glass that never existed. When the word hit was used instead, the memory changed again. One word was enough to rewrite the past. Your brain also edits memories to protect your identity. It softens embarrassing moments. It exaggerates achievements. It reframes failures. This isn't XNL, it's survival. A brain that constantly reminded you of every mistake would destroy your confidence and mental health. So the brain lies to you, and it does so convincingly. What's more unsettling is that every time you remember something, you change it. The act of recalling a memory makes it unstable for a brief moment. When it's stored again, it may be slightly altered. Over years, memories drift further and further from reality yet feel stronger and clearer. This means your childhood, your past arguments, even important life moments may already be partially fictional. You are not remembering the past. You are remembering the last version your brain created. In extreme cases, people develop entire life events that never happened. They mourn losses that didn't occur. They feel guilt for actions they never took. The brain, once convinced, refuses correction. The most intense part, you cannot detect a false memory from the inside. Confidence means nothing. Clarity means nothing. Emotion means nothing. A false memory can feel more real than a true one. So ask yourself this chilling question. If your brain can fake memories perfectly, how much of you is built on things that never actually happened?